Hello and welcome to episode 242 of the Paint All the Minis podcast. We put the show together so you can have something to listen to whilst you sit at your hobby desk and paint your minis of any scale, genre or game. Our aim is to have a relaxed and genuine conversation with someone who's as involved in the hobby as you are on any level from top to bottom, because we've all got our own unique and individual stories. So sit at your desk, paint your models, listen to the chat. We really do hope that you enjoy the content. This week I speak to Mr. Andy Hobday. Andy has had a variety of roles in a variety of companies, and that gives him a great breadth of experience that he brings to bear in the different roles that he's had within the hobby industry. He currently writes rule sets for Wargames Atlantic along with Warhost as part of his Hobday and Hicks effort, amongst some other things. In this episode, we speak predominantly about his Wargames Atlantic work. You can go back to episode 41 and episode 114 to hear about Andy's personal journey and his previous positions. He must something to do with the 4. So this 4 keeps on popping up, doesn't it? 242, 41, 114. All the 4s for Mr. Hobday. It's always great talking to Andy. He's always got a really frank and honest opinion about stuff. Always really interesting to talk to, and just the depth of experience that I just mentioned there is always fantastic. So we really hope that you enjoy the show, and thanks to Andy for coming on and being a great guest. You can come and hang out with us. We've got a whole group of people that hang out on Discord. There's a link in the podcast description that you can come and you can try your hand at our weekly quiz. You can come and get involved in our monthly painting competition. You can get involved in our online leagues and all our different chats about music and food and where we've been and all that kind of stuff. It's a really good opportunity to come and hang out with a bunch of like-minded people with no monetization or spam or adverts or anything like that. It's an opportunity that's quite refreshing in this day and age, that it doesn't ram stuff down your throat. You can also message me at paintalltheminis at gmail.com if you have any questions. You can come and hang out on the Facebook group, Blue Sky, or any other method that you can find. Anyway, that's enough of the pre-ramble. Let's go.
Paint all the minis that you can. And when you paint your minis, listen to that podcast with Dan Adams, that is.
You smell that? Do you smell that? Dull coat, son. Nothing else in the world smells like that. I love the smell of dull coat in the morning. You know, one time we varnished a whole army for 12 hours. When it was all over, I walked up. We didn't find one of them. Not one stinking unpainted mini. The smell, you know, that varnish smell? The whole army smelled like victory.
So hey, I am here once again with Mr. Andy Hobday. How's it going, Andy?
Very well, thank you. Thanks for inviting me on.
Pleasure, always a pleasure. But the sole reason I invited you on is because you just told me that you'd moved more to the Lincoln area. So let's talk geography in terms of sausages. Let's talk about a Lincolnshire sausage. Could you identify what's included in a Lincolnshire sausage and maybe another sausage from another area? Is that possible?
I know what Lincolnshire sausages taste like, so I'd be able to identify it from taste.
Yeah.
They're quite spicy. But so I could pick one out of a sausage lineup, I reckon. We were allowed to taste it.
Yeah. And do you have a particular favourite type of sausage? Is Lincolnshire now your favourite because that's the area where you are now living, or is there another sausage which is top of your list?
I just like sausages, if I'm being honest.
They're good, aren't they?
A nice pork sausage with a bit of apple in is quite nice.
Yeah.
There we go.
That's cool, man. Yeah, it's good sausages. I'm not sure if people know that there's lots of different types of sausage within England. Cumberland sausage, I think, is my particular favourite. I think I like Cumberland sausage. But have you tasted sausages from around the world? Do you have a kind of competitor to British English sausages? A bratwurst, for example?
Yeah, I have. Yeah, I lived in Germany twice as a kid, so they were nice. I'd like a good bratwurst. But if I'm being honest, I don't think I've put that much effort into sausages, except when it comes to eating them.
Yeah. So you're not really thought about sausages so much, just eat it. Fair enough. Nice. So we're here to kind of talk about like what's changed since we last spoke. So when we last spoke, you were kind of front and center of Footsore, Gangs of Rome, the first edition of Baron's War, and many different things. So kind of a lot's changed. So for people who maybe haven't listened to that previous show, or maybe people that have listened to that previous show a while ago in terms of, where we're at, just give us a little bit of a snapshot about what you do right now.
Right now, the most recent thing that has happened, and that's the beginning of this year, is I moved over to work for Wargames Atlantic, who people know mostly from the vast number of plastic box sets of miniatures that they've been releasing over the last 7 years. I think they've been going now. And last year we had a big discussion around making plastic miniatures for the Baron's War, which went really well. It was quite successful, and off the back of that, it gave me a job. As they gave me a grand title of creative director.
Nice,
but I know it's nice, isn't it? But what it really means is I come on board to write games for them. So that's my job description.
Nice, that's cool. So how do you find games writing compared to other things that you might have done? Because you've kind of been a jack of all trades in many ways. You had your fingers in lots of different pies. So how do you is game writing something that you've always kind of wanted to do, or is it something that's been fairly new?
Yeah, probably a bit later, but it was when I was at Warlord Games. So the first set of rules that I worked on, which weren't just house ruling games that we played, was Test of Honor with Graham. And that wasn't a premeditated thing. We wanted to play a kind of samurai skirmish game with that kind of Kurosawa feel, and we couldn't find anything that would fit the bill. So we consciously wrote, and developed Test of Honor. And going through that process gave me a real taste for it. I actually really enjoyed it. And then when I left Warlord and we went into Footsore, bought Footsore and went into there with Mark, initially it was to just make toy soldiers, and then we thought, let's have some rules. So when we took over Footsore 8 years ago, that was really the start of it. So I would say writing rules is something that I've enjoyed since I started doing it, and obviously I kept doing it for the last 8 years. But it wasn't a conscious thing. I didn't think I'm a rules writer. I just think it's something I've become. Because it's something that I enjoy doing. But the beauty of the move over to Wargames Atlantic is it's actually now become my job, my full-time job. And I was always doing it alongside everything else. Right.
And so now it's more front and center. That's cool.
But absolutely, it's everything for them. So that's a real positive for me. Yeah.
So Wargames Atlantic is a company that's fairly new for me. I kind of think I first bumped into Wargames Atlantic with some kind of jungle fighters, some sci-fi jungle fighters, and then also the miniatures for 0-200 hours, also Wargames Atlantic, and also just recently The Last War. There's a kind of Wargames Atlantic bundle, which is The Last War, and that's really cool. So it kind of seems to be like it's a kind of a late starter joining the pack. Would you kind of think that would be an adequate kind of explanation? A late starter joining the pack?
I think that's interesting. I think it's gone into the major player pack. To use. If you look at just the number of plastic kits that they have, I think they're in 70 something at the moment, 75, and that's without. They did a crowdfunding last year for The Damned, which will add another 11 sets, and obviously seeing the release schedule for this year, it's going to take it well over 100 plastic kits. And that would put them well up there as a company, you know, with a lot of plastic. You know, we're talking on a par with Warlord Games, Victrix, those type of people. So, you know,
and in 7 years though, that's the thing, right? In 7 years, so that's quite a rise, right? The point is quite a rise, like just really coming in from nowhere and being like, wow, look at all this stuff.
Yeah, oh, absolutely, and that was quite a draw for me. Because I obviously can see the capability that they have and the actual, you know, capacity. So coming in, you know, saying it's my first rule writing job, and I'm working for a company that can make as many plastic kits as I want, you know, for any games that I want to write, it's a real draw. And I still think it's pretty early days for them. I think they're just managing what they could possibly do. I mean, they could easily be twice as big. And that, you're right, coming from nowhere, that's quite staggering, especially into an established marketplace.
I bet it's exciting as well, because you kind of get to see the miniatures that already exist. You probably got a view into the miniatures that are coming out over the next kind of few years, 3-5 years. And does that kind of fuel the rules writing, where you can like, oh, there's no rules that exist for these minis, or these minis are coming up, but, you know, and kind of got an opportunity to write a rule set for that? Is that kind of how it works?
Yeah, both, really. I mean, we sat down towards the end of last year and we talked about a couple of games that we want to release this year. I mean, one of them is the Classic Fantasy Battles 10mm fantasy game.
Yes.
So, you know, just being able to do a game like that, which is quite difficult in plastic because there's so many fantasy races, and the fact that they could release them all quite quickly is quite a draw. So that's quite exciting. But also, you're absolutely right. I mean, we're in a place where we could devise a game and create brand new kits for that game because it works. Or, you know, there is so much out there at the moment. Like, they have a range called Death Fields, which again, we talked about writing rules for that as a game as well. So it's going to be a bit of both. I mean, we've already got 3 games planned, which will take us up to Salute next year. And 2 of those are already being play tested quite extensively. So, you know, we can be quite rapid. Yeah, it is. It's really, you know, it really is exciting. And you know, the world's your lobster, as they say. You know, we can go either way, and we're still at a size where we're still quite agile.
So for people who maybe don't know a bit about Wargames Atlantic, have you got the kind of the abridged history? Where are they based? Who are they? And how are they so nimble to be able to create these kits?
Initially, the chap who owns it is a guy called Hudson Adams, and he's based in the US. How they set up is they have the molds made at the moment in China, but they actually manufacture in the US, and we're soon to manufacture in the UK as well. So we're just looking for a site here. So what will happen then is all the, you know, thanks to Games Workshop spending a lot of time over in the US having their plastics done there. There's a lot of skill over there, so which we've tapped into. So as it stands, that's the way that it works. We get all of the tooling done there, but all of the manufacturing is going to be done over here. At the beginning of this year, we set up a UK arm of the business. So although it's a US business, there's a UK business set up as well, entity. And the idea is that we're going to grow both of those sides on either side of the pond. So yeah, it's quite exciting. You know, there's a head office in in Telford, and the chap running the UK operation is a guy called Charlie Monaghan, and he's going great guns. And there's a small team actually on site, and then there's a lot of us like myself who work remotely. And that team is just going to continue to grow
Nice.
as the business grows. Yeah.
Because one thing about business is the question mark around a lot of business is the scalability, right? You know, and you think about a small independent rules writer that's, you know, creating some rules and trying to get it out there through crowdfunding. There's a lot of great ideas that would really stick, but they maybe don't have the platform. And then you think, is this genuinely scalable? But I think with having access to those minis and the nimble nature that we mentioned about being able to go in different directions, it's kind of it ticks a lot of the boxes that maybe have question marks in going through other means.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Yeah, it's a really good point to make. I mean, Baron's Wall is a good example of that, and I mentioned it because we recently partnered with Wargames Atlantic to do a new starter edition, second edition of a starter box, all full of plastic. But you know, Baron's Wall's been around since 2019, so. The rules, the version 1's 5 years old, and that was crowdfunded by Paul Hicks and myself, and that initially was just to do figures. So, looking at where that game started to where it is now, it's exactly, you know, it's a good example of what you mentioned there. You know, we were lucky that people liked the miniatures, and obviously having Paul sculpting them helped because he had quite a following himself, and he's a great sculptor. And over that 5 years, we built Baron's War into quite a big community. It had 13,000 people on Facebook. You know, we sold 10,000 copies of version 1 rules, and that was all as an independent. And the beauty of now of being able to partner with Wargames Atlantic is they're able to kick us on to the next stage, which is, you know, they created 5 different box sets of plastic medieval miniatures to go with the game. They helped us release the game, and you know that's just come out, and it's gone great guns. You know, this month is on release. So I think you're absolutely right. There's a step change, but the point I'm trying to make as well is, I mean, it's good for me because it allows one of my games to get out there, etc. But you know, there is a lot of good games out there done by a lot of independent people, and sometimes, you know, they miss because people don't pick them up, you know, or people don't see them. So there is a lot of good stuff that does, unfortunately, not flourish, which is a shame.
It is for sure. So just before we delve into Baron's War 2nd edition, I'd like to mention something that I'm looking forward to with Wargames Atlantic, and then if you could pick something out that you're really excited about. I'm really excited about the small scale fantasy battles. I saw a box of orcs the other day, and I just got really excited to see that scale of orcs. I've not seen many plastic that scale orcs in a long time, and so it was really great to see that, and that just got me really excited. But you mentioned a rule set to do with that, right? So is there a rule set come in for fantasy massed battle, and when might we likely see that? Because I'm pretty excited about that, man, I'm not gonna lie.
It's called Classic Fantasy Battles, and it'll be a 10 mil fantasy game. The initial rules have been written already, so we are currently playtesting them. And there's still quite a bit to add, as you know, nothing ever, you know, is successful on first pass with the enemy, is it? So, but I'm going back to Telford next week, funny enough, to do more playtesting, and if that goes well, then we'll be starting to finalise the manuscript. The plan is, if it all goes as planned from there on in, that it will be released in November, I think we're aiming for.
Nice, that's really cool. And I think that's a definite niche. Some people prefer metals, some people prefer resins, and some people prefer plastics. I very much personally prefer plastics, not at the detriment of the others. So just the idea of having these plastics for fantasy armies is wetting my whistle for sure. So I'm definitely going to keep my eyes on that, and especially because we can already get a number of the sprues now, right? And there's only going to be more coming forwards as we come to the game release. So that's kind of good because people can buy things and start thinking about buying things, and maybe get them on a painting table to be able to play painted from day one. That'd be pretty cool, wouldn't it?
That's the plan. Yeah, when we start to firm up the rules a bit more, what the idea will be is we'll share how to build your armies, so people can base them up all ready to go. So there's going to be a lot of development shared.
There's just something about 10 mil fantasy mass battle that just gets me really excited. Are you the same? Have you been a War Master fan or equivalent games in the past?
Yeah, love War Master, and that's been hasn't helped writing these rules because I've gone, that's a really good mechanic. It's War Master.
Yeah,
that works really. Oh, that's War Master as well. So there's been a bit of that. But I think I like mass battle games in that scale. I like.
It's good, isn't it?
I think if you're going to play big forces and not just fantasy, they should be that scale. I think. Yeah.
I agree, and so that's what I've seen recently that I'm super excited about. So is there something that you've seen, either minis wise or rule stuff that you tinker around with, that you're really excited about?
I mean, obviously I'm excited about those rules. We're currently coming up with some intro, because obviously having that kind of scale, it's all about command and control. Mm-hmm. So we're trying to find a way to make that work and make you as a player really feel like you're controlling the army. Mm-hmm. And also, make sure things do happen all the time. What I don't like about some games is when you roll a dice, you don't roll the dice, get the score you want, and then you can't move anything. So I always want something to be going on. It might just not be what you want it to be. So I think that's quite a cool way of approaching it. But I'm very interested in we're calling it like the round base rules at the moment, where we're creating a skirmish. I say we're creating, it's done. A set of skirmish rules for Wargames Atlantic, and there's a really cool. I can't give too much away because I don't want it to be copied before it's released.
No, I get it.
There's a really cool mechanic in there where you it's kind of a bit of resource management within your units. So it's not just your morale going up and down, but things change. You buy a unit in a certain way, they've got certain stats, etc. But things that happen to them throughout the game can actually totally change their profiles.
Okay.
So you can manage, you can manage, your guys can get overexcited and, get a bit bloodlusty if you want them to get in there and charge and do whatever. Or, you can attack certain areas of your opponent's force to control what they can do. So I know it sounds super vague, and it probably sounds like every other war game, but it's quite a novel approach. And I'm looking forward to being able to get that out there to play testers beyond Wargames Atlantic, just to make sure that I've not gone mad.
I remember when we spoke about Gangs of Rome, and one thing that really jumped out to me of Gangs of Rome was two things. One was like the interaction with people around the kind of tabletop, and then the second thing was you could potentially be attacked by somebody, but you weren't aware of what you're getting attacked with until the attack. And I always really liked that mechanic. That was something that I really liked, because not necessarily because it was realistic, but sometimes you're not sure how dangerous someone might be until they're right up in your grill. So that was something I always appreciated, whereas a lot of war games or skirmish games that I played, sometimes it's very quickly apparent who the most dangerous person is. So that was something that I really liked. And so what's your approach to innovation? How do you approach innovation? How does it occur? And do you just see something on a movie and think that looks kind of cool, or how does it percolate?
I think good question. I think you can categorize games as in, we just talked about 10 mil mass battles, and we just talked about skirmish games, and there's other games in between there, but most they all do certain things in those genres. So you all move, you all shoot, you all do those kind of things. There's a morale based thing, there's armor, equipment, whatever. But I think a game needs to have something unique or something that sets it aside. Otherwise, you're just rinsing and repeating.
Yeah.
So I don't think of mechanics first. I think of how I want the game to feel, or how I want what sort of response to something, or that kind of approach. And then we excuse me, we will play test it around and around to try and emulate that feeling. And then if we can get that, then you can then hone in on the mechanics, because what happens is you leave them as broad as possible so you can experience as many different things through playtesting. And what will happen over a period of playtesting is it will slowly distill into a mechanic, and then that's what you keep. So I think to answer what you're asking is, I don't go, oh, that mechanic will do that. It grows out of the playtesting, but
the feeling,
the feel of it, and it has to feel right. You know, if your guys are armed with certain weapons or wearing certain armors, or they have certain abilities, it has to feel like those things. So that's really quite key to me, and that, you know, if I'm going to send those guys, you know, over that hill into that defended obstacle, you kind of know what's going to happen based on the situation. However, having that extra mechanic can kind of change the outcome.
That's cool, man. It's really interesting.
Yeah.
It's really interesting just hearing people's, craft, I think, would probably be the best way to put it. I think, you know, your craft is something that you build up over a number of years through lots of different experiences, both positive and negative and revelationary and maybe stagnant. And there's a lot of experience that goes into something that would come out at the end. And I think that's, craft is definitely something that I would link it to. That's cool. So let's kind of get on to Baron's War then. So you mentioned that just recently Baron's War 2nd edition had come out. So before we get into 2nd edition, just talk to us, give us like the general overview of Baron's War, and maybe the kind of the feel that you just mentioned there about what you want to intend it to feel like for players. And then we can kind of start digging into mechanics and special features of the 2nd edition.
Okay. Yeah, the Baron's War, there's two. If you're not familiar with the Baron's War, there are two civil wars in the 1200s. The first one is 1214 to 1217, and that's the one that I really focused on. And even though it's a 3-year period, there's quite a lot of intense stuff going on in there. Mainly King John, but why I chose the Baron's War was really I had a bit of a man crush on a guy called William Marshall, who by the time of the first Baron's War he was nearly 70, but he was still, you know, he's called the greatest knight, but that's probably because his son wrote his biography, you know, when he died, and he penned his story, and that is carried all the way through, you know, to from then to now, so you can read it. It's probably the most comprehensive biography of anybody of that period. So there's a lot of good stuff in there. So that's really how it all started. Was I just wanted to make some Baron's War figures with Paul, and we then ended up with people asked for rules 5 years ago, so we created the Baron's War, and what I wanted it to be was a skirmish game. So it's a round-based game. You play 25 to 30 miniatures aside, and if you think of typical English or French or, you know, Western European knights, you know, your knights in excuse me, in chainmail and a helmet, and he's got a tabard on a barded horse, and then you have your sergeants who are your professional soldiers, and then you have your levy, and plate armor's not been, you know, devised at this point, so it's very much that kind of traditional period. So that's the kind of approach we took to the game. On the tabletop, your mounted knight is probably like a tank, so you don't have many of them really in a skirmish game, and it's, you know, it gives you a great mix of your retinue. It's really like it's one baron or one lord with his local retinue, and there was lots of these feudal systems in in England and France at the time. So what he would do is turn up to the battlefield with, it's not even a battlefield at this stage. It's probably a minor infraction with your local neighbour, and you just bring your 30 guys together and have a fight. So that's kind of the idea of the game.
It's really good. It's really good, isn't it? It's a setting that kind of lends itself to that, because you've got like a kind of quite a fancy, important, well-armoured, well kind of heeled chap, a couple of his closest chums, and then you can see the whole hierarchy, just like a guy with a sharp stick. And I wouldn't fancy being the guy with the sharp stick coming against someone that's really
Absolutely
That's interesting. So how much research? You mentioned that you kind of like, you were interested in this period. So how much research did you put into this when you were first discovering it? And was there anything that kind of surprised you or intrigued you that you didn't necessarily know before you went into the rules writing of this?
I think when I first discovered all of this period when I was about 14, which is a long time ago now. And a game called Cry Havoc, which was kind of set in this period. It was quite a popular game back then, and it was a hex-based game with flat counters by Gary Chalk. And so I'm kind of aware of it then, and was attracted to the period, and obviously being at school, went to the library, read as much as I could. However, I'm no historian, and I will put my hand up for that. I'm very much an armchair historian, focusing on periods that I like. I love samurai, hence Test of Honor, and I love this kind of period of knights as well before they get to the period of any plate. So what I did first was, making miniatures is great. We could just find miniatures we like and poses and talk about it, but obviously we thought if we're writing a game, we do actually need to do some research because there's people out there who know a lot more than I do. So I read voraciously for about 6 months, bought every book I could find, read up as much as I could, and then obviously when we were talking about it, people came out of the woodwork on social media who were into this period, and I asked them just loads of questions. So what that knowledge allowed me to do was kind of build with George Asling, who worked with me on the rules. We could build a points builder based on history, really. So if we're saying that a knight on a horse is a tank, we had this kind of Rosetta Stone of calculations. So it started with like a normal human, and then we built up and down based on their armor. So history fed in, very much fed into the actual building of the game in that way. And also, we needed to make a list of all the weapons that they had and how they worked in that period. So a crossbow is still like, it's not, in the First Barons' War, they're not winding them up into those like really powerful crossbows. They're still very much belt loaded, but they're still quite powerful. So it's again finding the right fit for the weapons so they fit into the game. That was something I was going to mention as well, is that the aesthetic really lends itself to a wide variety of weapons, which makes it interesting. Spears, pole arms, crossbows that you mentioned there, kind of longbows, falchions, swords, axes. There's a whole range of different weapons that were just like, it's not contrived, they were there. Right? Does that kind of make sense? Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And some wicked things as well. They used to hit each other with some really wicked bits of metal. It's quite frightening. So, and again, because it's then taking all of that and distilling it into a game is quite tricky, because initially we were like, well, they can be armed with whatever they want and we'll put them in the same units, etc. And it did work, but it made it quite the game quite unwieldy and quite time consuming. Because it's like, well, he's armed with a mace and he's armed with a falchion, and they're all in the same group, and you have to roll for each one individually. So, and that's how it started. And then over a period of time, as I mentioned about playtesting, it just made it easier to have everybody in the same unit armed with the same weapon, which isn't historically accurate probably, but again, you're sacrificing a bit of historical accuracy for playability.
Yeah, for sure. So in terms of mechanics or stuff that's going on in a game, is there anything that you're particularly proud of, or anything that you think is a particular triumph for the game in terms of how it plays on the tabletop and the sort of things you're doing and how you're doing them?
Yeah, I mean, my favourite mechanic in the game is there's a morale penalty mechanic. In version 1 it was called morale dice, but now we've called it morale penalties, because if you call anything a dice, people want to roll it.
Okay.
So as your group, the units are called groups, so as your group starts to take casualties, they start to get morale penalties. And then whatever your morale score is, your morale penalty score, actually starts to influence your dice rolls. Mm-hmm. So it doesn't just influence your ability to run away. You're more likely to run away if you've got a high number of morale penalties, but also it starts to affect other things that you might have to do, like take orders, combat. So your morale penalties are compared when two groups come into combat with each other. So the one with the worst morale is actually gets combat penalties. Mm-hmm. So again, it kind of makes that it's a living, breathing thing on the battlefield. So it's to really show that as a unit group starts to take casualties and is not enjoying the actual the experiences they're going through, it does affect how they are on the battlefield.
That kind of makes sense, right? It's like, John, you killed John. I worked with John for ages, been my neighbour, and you naturally kind of through that attrition, you're gonna start not necessarily thinking about exactly right. And you're not necessarily going to think about the damage that you can output. It's more the damage that you might potentially receive from what you've actually seen. And I've got, I don't know too much about those whole medieval battles and things like that, but I just think it would be terrible, and I feel so fortunate that I've not been involved in that sort of stuff, right?
Totally agree. Gruesome, I think. Absolutely gruesome.
You just be so brave just to go and get amongst it. It's really cool. So in terms of what you're doing on the battlefield, you mentioned that there's little disputes and a lot of territorial disputes about this is my land, that's your land, a little bit of land grab maybe, or someone standing up for a principle. No, you can't treat me like this, we're standing for better principles. What sort of things are we doing in the scenarios on the tabletop, and do those things get strung together to some sort of campaign growth system?
Yes. For the Barons, what we put in is there's a scenario builder in the back. So there's a list of 15 different campaigns that you can play. So you can dice roll the dice to see which one you get, or you can choose, decide on what you're going to play. And then coupled with that, there's also 12, I think, I might be wrong, different setups. So how you actually deploy on the battlefield. So the idea is you will roll which scenario you play, and they're all got objectives. So they're all narrative, based scenarios, and by combining what the scenario is with what your deployment is, it gives you so many, so much variety around the scenario you play. So there's some longevity there. And then there is a campaign system. So there's two things we've done. We've done some mini campaigns that you can buy and download, which is where you're just linking 3 scenarios together, and the outcome of one feeds into the next one. And also the supplement book called Death and Taxes actually has a full-blown campaign in there as well, where you play for a whole year. So there's loads of link stuff in there, and within the system as well, there's a builder baron. So you can there's a commander generator, so you can actually roll up or choose and build your own commanders. So it can get quite personal and quite narrative driven. So there's a lot of scope.
One thing that we neglected to mention with that kind of that era is the potential for a certain gentleman in green tights to possibly be involved in some way, right?
He is in there. There's rules for him as well, and his quite merry friends. So you can take them. So Death and Taxes also has a section on outlaws, so you can actually take an outlaw band as well.
That's really cool, and it's something that's really interesting because it's not fantasy, it's historic, but there's certain fantasy notes, and I gather that that's because fantasy writing and novels and ideas were drawn from historical epochs and eras as well. So it's like it's historical in nature, but there's still opportunities to potentially push it in a more fantasy setting, right?
Yeah, of course. And we've also, they think he's based on lots of different people. So, actual historical people. So 2 of those we've actually included as well. There's a guy called Eustace the Monk, who was he was a French bandit. And he got involved in the Barons' War near the end. He was a quite despicable fellow, really. And then a guy called William of Cassingham, who is probably, if I was having to, and I'm not a gambling man, but if I was, I would put my money on him being Robin Hood.
Right. A little bit like Banksy, but back in the day.
Back in the day, yeah. So he would be my Robin Hood, would be William of Cassingham, yeah.
There you go. That's awesome. And so, as you kind of transited from first edition into the more recent second edition, how did it evolve? Yeah. How was it refined? What did you keep? What did you snip? And how is it kind of more polished than a previous edition?
Yeah, it's exactly that. I think it is a lot more polished. So, as we were saying earlier, it's five years since the rule book, the version 1 rule book was released, which has gone really quickly. And in that period of time, a couple of things happened. One was we created, I wrote the rule book during COVID. So the good side of it was I was at home, so I had time to write it. So that's how I was able to do it. The negative side of it was we had a very small playtesting group because you weren't allowed to meet people outside your bubble. So
those were the days, eh?
Those were the days, yeah. So we had a very limited amount of input into it, and feedback. So however much we thought it was great, there was obviously, when we released it to more people, and over the last 5 years, the community that's built around the game has fed so much back in. It could have been better, and they were right in most cases. So we've taken all of that feedback and all of the errors that we missed, when we're proofing the original, and we've just tidied the whole thing up, really. But one of the major things that we've changed is the way that you build your retinue. We've made it a lot simpler. We were talking about mechanics earlier. And this is a great example of us not having many people to cast their eyes over it. We thought we'd created this really clever way of building the retinue in version 1, where because they were all humans, everybody's stats are similar. What makes a person different is the weapons that they're armed with, the training that they have, and any abilities. So we wanted to create very different profiles for different types. So here's a spearman, here's an archer, here's a knight, etc. So we kind of forced their profiles onto them based on what weapons they were armed with, what armor they had. We actually affected their stat line profile. And in hindsight, that wasn't a good idea because it made it quite confusing for people. So what we should have done is, and this is what we've done in version 2, is these are your 4 stat lines for green, irregular, regular, and veteran type of humans, characters. So that everybody uses the same stat line. We've taken all of the weapons, all of the armor, everything off, and we've applied those modifiers now to the dice instead of their stats. And all of a sudden it just makes the whole thing a lot simpler. And it's still the same, in theory you can see the working out. It hasn't changed. It's just the application has changed, and it's just made that whole process a lot more understandable, which I think is a real positive thing.
Yeah, I think you mentioned there about how when you set something out into the wild, what's great about that is that the directions that people take it. And people often talk about that guy in a negative context, but you kind of want that guy to break your game. And there's numerous times where I've been involved in games and I speak to someone, I was like, oh, okay, you've brought that same guy 5 times, and you brought that same armor or that same shield or that same, and then quite often it goes, why would I not take that? And I go, okay, what do you mean? It's like, well, I've looked at all of the stats of all of these things and all of the permutations, and there's no reason why I would never take that. And a number of different rules writers say the same thing, where they say they want to try and prevent the situation where it's like, there's no situation why I wouldn't just take that. So how have you, does that link in with the different things you mentioned there about the green, the veteran, the kind of the regular troops? Like how have you avoided those situations where you just, people take the exact same things all the time, because why wouldn't they not take that?
I agree. Well, yeah. I mean, you have to look at history. If it's an historical game, and in some ways it's very difficult, because a good example is when you have an evolution in warfare. So if you look, not talking about Baron's War, but if we just part like you look at something, we can talk about Baron's War. You look at a fully armoured knight on a horse, he's probably going to ride over everything. Yeah. Except another knight, fully armoured knight on a horse, because that's just what he would do. He's, he is, like I said earlier, he's the tank of the period. So, how do you stop that happening? Well, you can't, because otherwise you're then changing history in a way. You would stack, you'd have to use the point system, and you make the probability of, there has to be a probability that lucky levy with his sling or his bow is going to get that 1 in 50 chance of taking him out. But the way that you change it is to tailor the armies, that if you are going big and hard with that, then you go big and hard with that, and then you've not got many miniatures on the table. So in a game like Baron's War, you're going to get you are going to cause a lot of damage, but you're going to get less activations and all of those things. So by then having your scenarios being objective driven, it then becomes about what objectives you can capture, what you do on the table with your entire force, not just those few elite units, and then that kind of tailors it in a way and makes it more playable. But ultimately, and this is my opinion, and I haven't found anything different to this, all games can be broken. If you really want to do it, and you've got that bent, and you want to go and do that for the game, you can go and break it quite easily. And then you just get to the point of, well, if you're going to play like that, I'm not going to play like that. I just won't play with you anymore. And people who do play like that, and that's great. They try and break the games against each other, and they get a lot out of that, and good for them. But I'm more of a narrative player, and I like to tell a story. So I think that's the way you go. So
it's just it's interesting hearing those different takes from different people, and I always learn something from that, because I kind of come out of it the same way as you. It's like, well, I could do that, but no, I'm okay. I'm going to kind of just play over here in this fashion. So as it's kind of second edition has come out, you mentioned that it's kind of grown in popularity. You mentioned the transition to plastic. So is it all plastic now, or combination of metal and plastic?
Yeah, it's all plastic in the set. So I'm still working with Futsal Miniatures. So they have a comprehensive range of metal miniatures for the Baron's War still, which has been growing over the last 5 years. And then we're working with Wargames Atlantic on the plastics and the starter set, which we've done in conjunction with each other. So the idea is, if you like metal, you can use all of the Futsal stuff. If you want plastic, you can use all the Wargames Atlantic stuff. If you want to mix the two, you can. So that's the idea. But I you know, I'm being honest. As you know, Futsal's not a massive company. It's quite a sizable company, as in, you know, for traditional wargaming business. They couldn't, you know, do what Wargames Atlantic have done, which is, you know, all of that plastic. We just couldn't have done it through Futsal. So that's why we kicked on, because Barron's War really needed it. You know, it's become.
But
really
I think it's great to have that option. The kind of it's great because I meet people who just love metal miniatures and that's what they want.
Yeah.
And I respect that and value that. But then also to have a game where you can play in metal or plastic, that's quite rare. In my experience, it usually is one or the other. It doesn't tend to be so mix and match, or it doesn't tend to have the ability to do both in general, from what I've experienced.
Agreed.
Yeah. And so, like, as you kind of the second edition has come out, has it popped up in any unusual or surprising places? Have you been surprised about maybe someone that's got in contact with you, or been surprised about where it might have been selling, or how it's been selling? Is there anything that's been surprising?
Not as yet, because it's only been released for 4 days.
Okay.
So it is very new. It was at Salute. There was limited numbers at Salute, but its release date was the 25th. So it's gone great guns just on pre-order. I mean, it's exceeded our expectations. So it is still very, very new, and there's still people out there who haven't probably got their hands on the copy of the game that they've ordered, just because the volume that's been ordered is just far superior to what we thought it was going to be. So how do you manage expectation? Do you have like sales targets and things that are like quite hard and fast? Is it a little bit nerve-wracking, like as you kind of get to the release, you kind of hoping that it would sell and hoping that it would be popular? Yeah, I'd been dead nervous, if I'm being honest. Because I mean, all the logic dictates that it was going to sell well, or that people would you know embrace a second edition. But it is still a second edition, and I'm not a fan of, you know, every few years we'll just rewrite the same game because we should. I think we've rewritten and created a second edition because the game needed it. It wasn't a cynical way of getting sales. I mean, we were on about 20 pages, I think, for the FAQ and errata. And at that point, you know, you just at some point you have to bite the bullet and go, we really, really need to sort this out. So that's what we've done. And in an ideal world, I don't really want to write the rules again. I don't want to go back, because we could do, you know, new things for it, new source books, new things, you know, and keep adding to the game. So that's the bit of it, but it did need it. It has a big follow. I mean, we talked. I think we're nearly on 14,000 now in the Facebook group, which is huge. And you just think, you know, we sold 10,000 copies of version 1. All of this stuff is.
That's a lot. That's 10,000. Like, that's really good, isn't it?
For an independent set of rules that, you know, Paul and I had to pay to release. You know, it's pretty exciting stuff. So all the signs were there that it was going to be okay, but you know, he's still nervous. But
you never know,
well, and I hope we can build on it. I hope we can build on it. It's very encouraging.
Nice. That's really cool. So just before we kind of turn our attention to a different topic, is there anything that we haven't mentioned about Barron's War, or maybe something that you haven't had an opportunity to talk publicly about Barron's War that you'd like to bring up?
Not really. I mean, you know, for people who have come on board now, or people who have got into the plastics, there's plenty more plastic planned. So we're looking at doing another couple of sets this year. There's a source book coming in a few months. Funny enough, I was proofing it last night, looking at that, which has been written by. It's nice because we've got a team now. There's a little Barron's War team of. I mentioned George Asling earlier, but there's also a chap called Benedict Coffin, who is a proper grown-up. So I've actually got someone who can actually edit me and come on board, but he's also a prolific writer as well. So Benedict has spent a lot of time writing the first source book, and it's really good. So there's a lot of stuff planned for it this year. So yeah, it's all very exciting. It's this is just really, it's been, like I say, second edition's been released for 4 days. We've already got a load of releases planned for this year to keep everybody excited about the game.
Nice, that's really cool. That's awesome. Well, all the very best wishes for that, mate. I'm excited to kind of see how it grows and goes. But that's not the only thing that you're involved in. You also kind of got Hobday and Hicks too. So talk to us about what Hobday and Hicks is. Yeah,
Paul and I. I think it was a lot me twisting his arm, but as we probably aware, I am getting old these days. I'm 53 now, and I've been gaming for about 40 years, over 40 years. And one of the things that really got me into it was, like most people, Lord of the Rings and fantasy gaming, etc. And one of the things I always wanted to do, if I could, was a fantasy game with a fantasy range of figures. And off the back of the Baron's War, we've taken the rules, the mechanics, and we've created a game called Warhost, which is our take on elves and orcs and the dead and dwarves and humans, etc. And Paul has jumped on board, and together we're having a bit of a period where we're doing something which is a bit of a fun project for us.
That's really cool, man. It's exciting. So out of the range that he's tinkering around with, you mentioned a lot of different fantasy races there. What have you most been excited to create and see?
Well, just the orcs and the we've only just recently released the orcs and the elves. We kickstarted them last year, which went well. And we took them to Intercon in America earlier this year, which was really, really fun. But it's really difficult to answer to give. I mean, I like elves. That's my thing. So having the elves done and being able to have the elves that we've made painted by Darren Linnington, who is probably my favourite painter. And he's not painting so much anymore as commissions, but because we've become friends over the years, he's actually painted my elves for me. So that's made me quite excited. But creating wise, I'm looking forward to us doing the dead, which we're going to flesh out. So we got some really good no pun intended. We got some real excitement around those. But one of the things I'm very excited about is writing the background. So I've just been last week I've just been filling out the heads of the 4 magical orders. So being able to write their background and create the characters and their names and where they live in the world, and then talk to Paul about what they should look like. And we've got this kind of blank canvas where, if you're creating William Marshall for Baron's War, he looks like William Marshall. In this instance, they can look like anything we want them to be. So we've been working with a chap called Marco Caporani as well, who is a concept artist, and he's been doing a lot of our concepts for us, and that whole experience for me is new, and I'm really enjoying it. I'm really just enjoying it at the moment. It's just slow and steady.
Yeah, I was going to say that the difference between maybe historical things or that more rooted in history compared to something that is fantastical in nature. That's cool, man. That's interesting. And that's just something you're just doing for fun. Do you say you kind of just on the side, and you kind of just doing that as a side project? That's really cool.
Yeah, so it's a little project for Paul and I, and nice. He's currently sculpting dwarves as well as we speak. So we're looking to get the dwarf range out this year.
That's really cool. That's really cool. And can we get our paws on Warhost? Can we get our paws on it? Is it available now?
Yeah. We have a website, hobdayandhicks.com, and it's all on there. So the Warhost supplements on there, which couples with Baron's War. So if you got the Baron's War, you just need to go and buy that. and then we got a excuse me, a range of 60 elf figures, and there's a range of 60 orc figures at the moment on there. So yeah, it's been very exciting.
That's cool, man. So as we kind of wrap up our conversation, the kind of hours as rattled by as it always does. You mentioned you going to the States to a gaming convention. How was that? You mentioned it's not the first time you've been, but how do you find visiting our American cousins?
It was. I had a great time. We went last year for the first time to Adepticon, and it was just fantastic. We had an absolute ball, and we were really well looked after by a chap called Ben Chakota, who owns Badger Games, and also Old Guard Games, which is his store in Milwaukee. And it was Paul and I went, and we enjoyed it so much we went back this year. Mm-hmm. So this time we took Warhost. So when we were there last year, we made the vow to ourselves that Warhost was always an idea, and we said, well, let's do it and take it to Adepticon 2025, and we did it. Mm-hmm. So nice. It was quite a real positive thing for us. The only downside, as you can probably hear now after an hour, I'm beginning to lift my voice. I came back with COVID.
No, I thought it was all the karaoke.
Oh, I have never been so ill, Dan.
Dude, is that the first time you've had it?
No, it's the third time I've had it, and this time though, I for 2 days I was crying. I was in so much pain. And at that point, my wife said I was allowed to actually officially claim that I was ill. Up until that point, but because by the Wednesday, it started on the Friday, and because by the Wednesday I was crying, she said, okay, I think you are ill. So yeah, it was awful, mate. It was awful, and 10 days, I think, I didn't get out of bed.
Jeepers. Well, thank you for coming on the show, mate. Thanks.
Oh, it's okay. This is about 8 days afterwards, and I'm still 100%, but. I'm getting back there. I missed Salute and everything. It was awful.
Right. Oh, well, all the best, mate. I hope you get well soon. But yeah, it's a crippler, isn't it? I think I've only had COVID once, and yeah, it was pretty grim. Yeah. We got it just before Christmas 2023, I think it was. Christmas 23, I think it was. Yeah, it was a proper grim Christmas. It was like the most depressing Christmas day ever. Like, all of us were sick, all four of us.
Really sorry.
But yeah, it's the way it goes, man. But yeah, there you go. That's the kind of what happens if you travel, I guess, you kind of get out there. So... Yeah, so in terms of kind of game conventions and different things, is there anything else on the list? Is there anywhere we'll be able to see you the rest of this calendar year if we want to come and see Warhost or want to come and see Barons War 2nd edition?
Sarissa will be taking Barons War out and about with them. So they do most conventions. I'll be going to Games Expo this year again. But I like to go as a punter because I like to go around and look what people are doing, which is good. But I don't think we've got anything planned. I think it's done, unfortunately, for this year. I'm too busy writing rules.
Yeah. Squirreling away in the background with your quill. Right. Well, that's all we got time for, mate. It's been fantastic to speak to you as always, and thank you for coming onto the show, especially coming off the back of sickness as well. It's always interesting hearing your insight on things, and it's always interesting in seeing the kind of growth mindset that you have. It's really interesting to see the kind of the steps that have been made, like progressive and positive steps into things, and the future looks very bright in terms of the extension of your tendrils into different areas in terms of your rule writing. It sounds like an exciting time.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I'm having a ball at the minute, so I'm glad that's coming across.
So there you go, episode 242, all wrapped up there. Thanks again to Andy for coming onto the show. Always a really good guest, always great to have, always good value, always decent chat, always decent banter, decent pun in there as well, mate. I had to jump in there quick when he was talking about fleshing out the dead range. That was pretty good, man. That was a good unintended pun from Mr. Hobday, but I had to jump in there and just flag it because it was awesome. Yeah, if you missed it, he was talking about how he is creating an undead range, and he said this year we're going to be fleshing out the dead range. Oof, that's high quality. That's high quality right there. Anyway, hobby week, what's been going on for me? I'm painting some Lightbringers, some Baratheon figures from A Song of Ice and Fire. There's a unit of 2 units of Lightbringers, so 24 Dudas. They're kind of firing fire arrows. Is there an official term for fire arrows, or is it just fire arrows? They are firing flaming arrows. So I'm just knocking up all the base colours on those. Just finished pretty much all the base colours, the leathers, the metals, the cloths, boots, gloves, helmets, faces, all that kind of stuff, just the base colours. So starting to kind of work on some washes. I've just been doing some V Sabotage / V Commando guys as a palette cleanse. I think I mentioned those a while ago. Painting a few of those guys just to keep ticking over, and that's pretty much it hobby wise. Got a game of A Song of Ice and Fire tomorrow, first game in a little bit of time, so that will be good. Getting the Baratheon to the table, need to build my list for that, so they usually do 40 point lists, which works out about 4 to 5 units on the table, and then 2 or 3 NCUs, non-combat units on the side, so that should be pretty interesting. I'll put the list together for those a little bit later. I've been playing a lot of other games in the background, still playing Memoir 44 weekly, playing in the War Chest League, which is pretty good. Yeah, lots of hobby stuff is going on, but it's not about me, is it? It's about you guys. It's been great hanging out with you guys on Discord. There's a lot of stuff that's going on at the moment in the work in progress or work in progress section. All sorts of different stuff. Lots of object source lighting in there, which is pretty good. So yeah, make sure you come and swing by the Discord server if you haven't already, and you can just check all that awesome work that's going down. Super high level stuff as well in the stick a fork in it section. Things that are finished, really clean, sharp, high level finished work from a whole bunch of people. Really great to see. Like, just, I don't want to name anybody because there's so many amazing things. I don't want to seem like I'm focusing on one individual person, but lots of really super high quality work that goes on in the stick a fork in it. Really impressive, and really humbled that people come onto the Discord and share that work because it's pretty cool. That's pretty much it from me. No beer today. I'm on water, drinking some water. No particular reason, just the times of the recording at various different times. But I hope you're well. Hope you're keeping things on an even keel. Hope that you're squeezing the juice out of life and enjoying it as much as you can. Getting close to the summer holidays for me. 3 more weeks to go of work. That I can have a little bit of a rest, which is nice. Yes, reading stuff. I always mention what I'm doing hobby stuff. I never mention reading, so I must read like an hour and a half a day on average, often more. But I've been reading a really good, I think it's a trilogy, or it's definitely 3 books anyway, by Miles Cameron. I'm reading the second one at the moment. It's called The Fell Sword, and the first one is called The Red Knight. Really cool, really good books. I'm on the second one. I think there are more, but it's kind of like a Barons War theme. I wanted to mention it in this one because we talk about Barons War, but it's got like a Barons War kind of theme. It's got like a kind of a mercenary company, but it's kind of 100 years war-y, kind of plate armory, heraldic notes. So yeah, you might be interested in that. If you're interested in Barons War, you've listened this far along and you're interested in Barons War, and you've not heard of The Fell Sword by Miles Cameron or The Red Knight by Miles Cameron, check it out. The Red Knight is the first one, but it's got a lot of fantasy parts into. There's this thing, a certain faction called the Wild, which is all sorts of animals and beasts and different bits and bobs that they fight sometimes and join with sometimes, but it's got a real deep feel to it. It's got lots of different characters, lots of different things, lots of different approaches to seeing the world, and lots of different people doing lots of different things. So yeah, check that out for sure. I know I've done a really terrible job of giving it a synopsis, but yeah, it's pretty cool. Anyway, that's enough for me. That's enough of the Post Ramble. I'm off to go and start off a YouTube channel for amazing book reviews because I did such a great job with that one. But anyway, take it easy. I'll catch you on the next episode. Yup. Till next time we're together. Keep doing a terrible job with book reviews.